Angry South African union workers protest against a proposed national minimum wage hike. Doctors from around the world team up to combat cataract blindness on the continent. And fighting prejudice around disability with modeling in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Wednesday, April 25th is World Malaria Day, and this year's theme is We Are Ready to Beat Malaria. The World Health Organization and its partners are calling on all concerned parties to be ready to end the disease, which can be fatal. Along with medical advances, beating the disease will take money. After 16 years of steady decline worldwide, malaria cases are again on the rise. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
Microsoft founder Bill Gates has ploughed billions of dollars into tackling malaria. It has paid off. Deaths from the disease have fallen by more than 60% between 2000 and 2015. That is 7 million lives saved. But in 2016, that trend reversed, with more than 216 million cases in 91 countries, an increase of 5 million on 2015. Malaria is estimated to cost the African economies more than $12 billion per year and consumes up to 40% of national healthcare budgets. Children and pregnant women are most severely affected. The increase in cases is likely caused by a number of factors.
We're seeing quite dramatic increases in the resistance to the insecticides that we use to control the insect vector populations, and that has been really the mainstay of the gains, and very remarkable gains, that we've seen over the last few years. And we're just beginning to see that the parasites are starting to develop resistance to the drugs that we use to treat them.
The fight against malaria will likely get harder.
And we've gained what might be called the easier gains, and now we've got the harder ones to do, and they take even greater implementation and newer tools to allow us to look at where transmission is taking place.
Such new tools cost money, but funding has plateaued. At the Commonwealth Conference, Britain pledged more than $2 billion to fight the disease, while Bill Gates put forward another $1 billion and urged the international community to step up its efforts. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
We'll have more on malaria coming up a bit later. A British scientist is proposing a new way to defeat malaria. Now to South Africa. More than 2,000 angry union members demonstrated in Johannesburg Wednesday in a nationwide protest against a proposed national minimum wage. The 20 rand or $1.60 an hour minimum wage hike is supported by new President Cyril Ramaphosa and was approved by the cabinet in November. It was supposed to start on May 1st, but major objections over the wage bill may delay its rollout. Ramaphosa sees the proposed wage hike as an important step to tackle labor instability and wage inequality. But the protesting workers marching to Labor Ministry offices in Johannesburg argue that the prospective hike is not a livable wage. For more insight on this situation, let's go live via a phone to Anita Powell. Viewers, Anita Powell is standing by in Johannesburg. Good evening, Anita.
Hi, Vincent.
Yes, now, is there more than perhaps we know behind this particular national strike? We know that there's been many strikes in South Africa lately.
Yes, strikes are very common in South Africa, but this one does have a bit more of a backstory. SAFTU is a new union that is led by the former head of the largest union in South Africa. That's the Coalition of South African Trade Unions, COSATU. And that is a big political player. We are looking at elections in about a year in South Africa, and this is a very nice issue for this new union to take to the streets and assert their voice over and make a big show of force and tell the president we are a force to be reckoned with.
Now, first, it says that this was kind of proposed way earlier, was supposed to be rolled out by May. So was there no agreement from COSATU? Was it a one-sided kind of deal from the government?
No, that's not so much the case. It's that the implementation could be slow, and that ensuring enforcement could be very difficult, and there are also some constitutional tests to make sure that this will hold water. Kasatu has been pretty supportive of this, but the far-left political wing of Parliament, that's the Economic Freedom Fighters, who are now aligned with this new union, SAFTU, say that this is not enough because, as I said, there was an election in about a year, and they are appealing to South Africans who feel that they haven't seen the sort of economic empowerment that we should have seen about 25 years after the end of apartheid.
Now, the government talks about the whole question of a wage bill. Is the South African government going through some really difficult times that it would be not possible for it to give a better deal to the workers?
Well, actually, municipal workers under this bill are only eligible to make 11 Rand an hour. So they've kind of given themselves a break there already. Obviously, we have high unemployment and challenges in job creation. If you do raise the minimum wage too high, it will force a lot of small to medium enterprises to cut back their workforce. And so the government does have to take that into consideration whenever they talk about national minimum wages, which we haven't ever had in South Africa, just to be clear. This is the first time South Africa will have a national minimum wage.
Well, we'll watch and see what happens in the coming days. Anita, I want to thank you very much. That's viewers, Anita Powell reporting live from Johannesburg. Well, now, around the world, more than 200 million people needlessly lose their sight because of cataracts. 90% of people blinded by cataracts live in Africa and other developing countries. Africa 54's Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick joins us now with more. Haiti?
Vincent, cataracts can be easily solved, yet for millions in Africa, help is out of reach. One organization, See International, is on a life-changing quest to change that. Cataract blindness prevents millions in Africa from seeing their children or earning a living. Removing a cataract is simple and relatively inexpensive. So why are so many still living in darkness?
Most people are aware of the disease, but it's almost expected. Many people think that it's God's willing that it should happen, when it can be resolved if they just had access to good visual care.
What's preventing people from actually getting the care that they need?
A lack of available qualified surgeons, a lack of supplies, a lack of hospitals and clinics where they can treat the patients. So in the United States, there's 56 ophthalmologists per million people. But in Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, there's only an average of 1 or 2 ophthalmologists per 1 million people. So you can see how access to appropriate care is a problem.
See International in Southern Africa, bringing doctors, surgical supplies, and hope. Volunteer ophthalmologists from around the globe team up with eye surgeons in African countries.
We go out on short-term programs which will last approximately a week, and we'll be able to do anywhere from 100 to 300 eye surgeries during that period of time, and a tremendous number of screenings too.
These partnerships that you have with local doctors and local clinics, how do you establish those partnerships and how do you keep them going?
We go by invitation only. And what we find is that host ophthalmologists on the ground will need more surgeons to help. They'll need more intraocular lenses, more microscopes perhaps. And they'll let us know what they need. We'll provide what is needed. We never show up when we're not invited by a host on the ground. And that also helps with local ministries of health and civic authorities, because everything is done in a great collaboration. And then there's a great multicultural exchange that occurs. These people become fast friends for life usually. They go back year after year. Our greatest success has been in Namibia. The doctor that I work with there, Dr. Helena Ndume, is the first ever Nelson Mandela Prize winner because of her work in that country. And she's done 35,000 sight restoring surgeries there alone.
Life-changing surgery, free of charge. Avolio says information is key to reaching as many people blinded by cataracts as possible.
We will do a radio broadcast where we will ask people to come We will say that there's going to be an eye clinic. Please bring your daughter, your mother, your grandmother, anyone who cannot see, that this is their chance to see again.
And when someone's sight improves, so do their economic prospects.
Most of the time, a child or a young adult gets taken out of either school or the workforce because they have to tend to the person who is blind. So it really does have a double economic and education impact on individuals. Somebody goes from being blind to being sighted essentially in one day. The patch comes off, they can often see 20/20 or close to it. Most times they need no other care for the rest of their lives in regard to having their eye taken care of.
And SEE International has conducted tens of thousands of eye surgeries in Africa over the past 40 years. Avolio says every one of those surgeries is an investment in someone's life, community and country. Vincent?
Well, that's amazing. Now, two international watchdog groups say that incessant attacks on the media by populist politicians are posing a threat to major democracies. In their annual reports on the state of press freedom around the world, Reporters Without Borders and Freedom House harshly criticized Western populist leaders Wednesday for discrediting the media, berating journalists and threatening to impose restrictions. U.S. President Donald Trump received harsh criticism from both organizations. Reporters Without Borders called him a media-bashing enthusiast, while Freedom House said that Trump's characterization of the media as the enemy of the American people and his disparagement of journalists and media organizations have undermined public trust in fact-based journalism. The White House has yet to respond to the criticism. Reporters Without Borders' annual Press Freedom Index evaluates press freedom in 180 countries on a scale of 1 to 180, with 1 being the freest and 180 the least free. Now, in this year's index, Norway stole the top spot from Finland, while North Korea remained at the bottom of the number at number 180. Well, for more perspective on the challenges the media face in Africa, Tsedale Lema, editor-in-chief and founder at the Standard Magazine, joins me live via Skype from Frankfurt in Germany. Good evening, Tsedale.
Good evening, Vincent.
Yes, now, as a media owner yourself, what would you say are some of the ways in which government try to restrict press freedom?
Well, you know, the government has a lot of ways of restricting the press freedom. And in particular, the experience with the Ethiopian government is that even if we have abolished since 1991 censorship or direct censorship by the government, and somehow a seemingly independent media started flourishing, the government has been applying a lot of ways of indirect censorship, one of which is, for example, decapacitating the financial capacities of the media, especially the independent media, while it continued building its own media empire so that the independent media will have less chance of competing in the market with the government's media. This is just one part of it. And the other is, of course, you know, legislating draconian laws that are making it hard for independent journalists to get access to information, particularly government-related information. And now, this is another section.
We know that also, for example, the government of Ethiopia, just like other countries in Africa, have used the laws against terrorism, against journalists. What is it they don't want journalists to do?
Well, you know, we have seen journalists as being, of course, prosecuted, you know, even under the infamous anti-terrorism law. And most of the time, the government denies vehemently that there are no journalists that have been prosecuted for what they are writing. But when you look at the court process of these journalists, what they write and what they say is often presented as evidence against them. So it's obviously, you know, the government doesn't want what they're writing, what they're saying, even though it always denied that that's the reason they have been arrested and charged with terrorism. So it has to do with what they write and what they say.
And because these are challenges faced also across Africa, in particular in Ethiopia, do you see like the leadership, the new leadership in Addis Ababa could kind of give some break to the media there and accept some robust media?
Well, at least it looks from the rhetoric, what we have seen from the new Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is that he recognized some of the repressive laws in that country have had a greater role in destabilizing the country. He has been forthcoming in speaking about the anti-terrorism law. In general, he calls them the repressive laws, and we think it also includes the media law. And he promises that there will be, he doesn't say anything whether they want to repeal it or replace it or what they want to do with it. But there is a hope we do hope that he will be keeping his promise, and they will open up a little bit that the private and independent, particularly independent media organizations to thrive in the country.
We all look forward to seeing such a day when every journalist will operate freely. We thank you very much, Tedele, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, that's Tedele Lema, who is the editor-in-chief and founder Addis Standard Magazine. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, a new way to beat malaria. We'll explain. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
A taste for the sweet life motivates Yamashita Takahiro. He says, had I remained in Japan, the pastry-making courses there would have been tailored for Japanese people and would not have taught authentic French pastry. Yamashita, along with his classmates, are from Japan, learning French cuisine and pastry secrets at the prestigious École Hôtelière Tsuji of Lyon. Student Kana Maeda plans to be an assistant at École Hôtelière in Osaka or Tokyo. She says to share her experience with other students. Professor of French cuisine Amy Nallet says when students finish their one-year course for $30,000, they have a leg up on the competition. He says the time these Japanese students spend learning in France puts them 4 years ahead of others taking courses in Japan. And these students get a list of restaurants ready to hire those graduating from the École Hôtelière in Lyon. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
But a British scientist is proposing a new way to beat malaria. As Faith Lapidus reports, is developing an anti-malaria drug designed not for humans, but for mosquitoes.
The life cycle of the malaria parasite begins when an infected mosquito bites someone, allowing the parasite to multiply in that person's bloodstream. When an uninfected mosquito bites the now infected human, it triggers the parasite's reproduction stage, turning that mosquito into a carrier. Jake Baum and his team of researchers have identified compounds they believe could prevent the reproduction stage, which could theoretically stop the spread of the parasite.
Most of the frontline antimalarials that have been developed and are rolled out, they do a really good job of treating that child in the clinic and making sure that child is saved and is made healthy and then goes home. The challenge is most of them don't work against those sexual stage parasites. So that child, you've saved the child, but you've done nothing in terms of the transmission of malaria in a community sense.
Baum's team has devised a method that can screen up to 300 compounds simultaneously, looking for those that can inhibit the parasite's reproduction inside the mosquito. That approach would mean the next adult or child bitten by the same mosquito will not contract malaria. Baum is proposing a combined drug that can both treat the disease and stop mosquitoes from getting it.
I like the phrase, the altruistic antimalarial, because it's the idea of conceptually a drug that would be given, which is not about treating yourself, but it's about treating your community. And I think that's a terrific idea.
The proposed treatment comes amid new evidence suggesting the mosquito-borne parasite is becoming resistant to current anti-malarial drugs, hindering the global goal of eradicating malaria by 2040. I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
Well, once among thousands of Somalians willing to escape the instability at home for whatever opportunities available in Europe, some young men in Mogadishu are now making a living from the auto rickshaw taxi business. One of them is Ahmed Abubakar, who not only makes enough money for his family, but has found a good reason to remain in his country. Take a look at this report from Channels Television.
If you want to move around Mogadishu or any other big city in Somalia, the cheapest way to do so is to get one of these. The auto rickshaw taxis, locally known as bajajas, enjoys good patronage. Ahmed Abubakar, one of the numerous operators, is happy he joined the business after he abandoned plans to move to Europe. He wanted to follow the path millions of migrants from Africa, Asia and the Arab world take in search of a better life, but changed his mind at the last minute.
I wanted to go to Europe and become an immigrant after seeing beautiful photos from my friends already there. But when I looked at the journey and how dangerous it was, and the money I had saved was not enough, I said no. Instead, I bought a bajaja and started a new life for my family.
As Somalia recovers from decades of conflict, its Western-backed government is working to rebuild the nation, but it is still battling an Islamist insurgency. A few years ago, there were hardly any auto rickshaws in Somalia. Today, they are everywhere, maneuvering between private cars and other public transport vehicles. The taxi business has become a symbol of Somalia's efforts to recover from conflict, as many young men opt for the livelihood it offers.
Bajajas are cheaper than other taxis. I take one from Medina to Waberi. That's about 5 kilometers, and that costs us $1. I always use them as a necessary service every day, and I do not have to pay a lot of money.
Since 1991, the Horn of Africa nation has been in crisis and at the mercy of clan militias as well as Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab. Add hunger and maritime piracy to the list. But for Abubakar, one thing needs to be tackled, and quickly too.
The main obstacles I face are explosions and roadblocks in the streets of Mogadishu. Some of my friends lost their lives and their bajajas were destroyed. But what we have here is better than putting yourself at risk trying to get to Europe. We hope that we can find a better life in our home country.
While the bajajas are seen as a sign of a recovering economy, there is poor funding in the areas of healthcare, education and infrastructure, and unemployment remains common. Abubakar explains that he makes just enough money to care for his family and sponsor his younger siblings, but the business reinforces his decision to stay back in Somalia despite the odds.
Working in Mogadishu is very difficult because you meet good people and sometimes you meet bad people who can treat you very badly. But I have accepted this life.
There are no official figures on how many people have been employed in the Bajaja taxi sector, and because there's little regulation, it poses road safety issues. But for now, it is keeping many young Somalians from embarking on risky journeys to Europe.
Well, that was a Channels Television report. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. In the DRC, fighting prejudice through modeling. We'll be right back.
We can't use computers, we can't do our assignments.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. The runway is sexy and romantic at the 2018 Barcelona Bridal Fashion Week as the leading bridal fashion label Pronovias unveils its new collection. Titled In Bloom, the 2019 collection features see-through lace, crop tops, feathers, flowy sleeves, and a variety of veils. Models strut down a fairy tale garden like a catwalk in gowns of all lengths and style, from informal beach wedding to long and traditional. Many attendees are speculating over the kind of dress American actress Meghan Markle will wear at the much-anticipated wedding with Britain's Prince Harry on May the 19th. Though royal weddings usually feature classic and composed dresses, many expect Markle will innovate with a modern and perhaps fitted look. Well, next up, for people who can't hear, communicating with others is as simple as opening their mouth and making understandable sounds. For deaf people who live in a world vastly populated by hearing people, it is a more complicated story, and it's especially frustrating for the simple things of everyday life, like ordering a coffee in a cafe or restaurant. Bashar Kayem, the owner of Bashay's restaurant in Panchpol, has asked an expert to teach sign language to his staff. Learning sign language isn't as difficult as hearing people may imagine at first. Kayem's idea is a rarity for the moment, but the hope is that it will inspire other businesses to follow suit. Well, and finally, activists in the DRC capital of Kinshasa hosted the first fashion show for differently abled people to promote acceptance and removal of barriers that the disabled face in the country, under the theme Toza Fair, meaning we are proud in the local Lingala language. 15 models living with disability proudly walked down the runway, showcasing a variety of outfits by local designers. The show's organizers, the Continental Foundation, says the fashion show was the first of its kind in the DRC, and they hope to encourage dialogue and inspire a new generation of disabled Congolese that feel accepted and confident. And that's what's trending today. Well, and before we leave you, we have this programming note. Coming up in 90 minutes, we'll have a special town hall presentation of a Straight Talk Africa hosted by VOA Health correspondent Lenore Madu, called Autism, Breaking the Silence. We'll have a panel of experts and a live audience in our Washington studio to discuss a serious developmental disorder that impairs the ability of children and adults to communicate and interact. That's Autism, Breaking the Silence, in 90 minutes. Thanks for watching and have a good evening.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Today's episode won't cost you anything.
Freebie.
Let's see what this one is about.
Anna, I love my job.
Oh yeah? Why is that?
I get so many freebies from the bands I write about. CDs, t-shirts, water bottles, even tickets to see them perform.
Wow. The only freebie I ever got from my